today, the story of how this podcast actually happened, it's another story in itself. Basically, we've got new mics, we've got new equipment, and as with any tech fails or demo fails, I apologize to you, Deepak, for the hassle. This man is very busy, and I'm very happy for you to be here. So, who are you? Who is this very handsome man that's sitting next to me? There are not just one, but two handsome men today. For your eyes and ears. So today I'm joined by none other than the king of freebies, Deepak Tailor. He's an Amazon best-selling author with his book, How to Live for Free. Get that right. The company he founded, Latest Free Stuff, is a treasure trove of deals, bargains, and freebies, attracting over 1 million visitors a month. The company has a massive following across social media with 800,000 email subscribers, 600,000 Facebook fans, and a growing community on Twitter and Instagram. His company's app, the first in the UK to offer freebies to people, has amassed over 300,000 downloads. The company has worked with over 4,000 brands, including Amazon, Boots, Argos, Disney, ASOS, Boohoo, John Lewis, and so many others. Wayfarer as well. I like them. Deepak's been featured everywhere from BBC's Dragon's Den to Forbes, and he's here to share his learnings on all of his marketing secrets. When he's not working, he can be found watching rugby, watching his beloved Man United, boo, watching tennis, or traveling to exotic locations and doing some extreme sports, which Deepak said may not be extreme for himself, but for the layman, it was quad biking. Also the snorkeling and the list goes on. The reason I know this is because I had a really good snoop on his Instagram before actually preparing for this interview. We are very lucky to have him because he's actually expecting his first child with his lovely wife, and we have caught him just as he's about to turn a new chapter in his life. So firstly, welcome to the show, Deepak.
Thank you for having me here.
Let's get straight into it. Deepak, for the audience, who are you and what do you do?
So my name's Deepak. I'm the founder of a company called latestfreestuff.co.uk, which is kind of a platform for users to claim free samples of products from top brands. So you could have one thing I claimed very recently, which my wife was very happy about, was a free pack of Pampers nappies.
Oh, wow. That's very pertinent.
So picked it up only a couple of weeks ago, actually. So there's a Pampers app where you can go into any supermarket and claim a free pack of nappies at the moment, basically. There's another one which gets delivered to your door. So offers like that, but it's not just Pampers, but you could have makeup products, you could have beauty products, there's loads of food and drink. We've had like cans and cans of Red Bull delivered to us before. Lots of it arrives right in this office, actually. Every time we have to test it.
I've got it. So we actually share the office space. We are neighbors, so that's how I was able to actually literally grab him and actually say, please do a recording with us. The first question is actually, what's been the wackiest stuff that you've given away?
The wackiest stuff. So we've probably had lots of kind of X-rated stuff that's been delivered sometimes over the years. But there's also been just like weird and wonderful products that probably should have never been produced. So one of the things that the reason like companies give away free samples is they're testing new flavors of different things. So we've had odd flavors of like baked beans and odd flavors of tomato ketchup. Tomato ketchup. So imagine Heinz merging tomato ketchup with like some weird like thing that just wouldn't like go together. So they've given out samples of that basically to test the market.
So I want to get more into that later on in terms of the value propositions for the brands that who work with you. And I can vouch. So in the office we share together. There's always like odd bits and pieces of things that are lying around, and it looks very random. And this is before I knew who you were, so it was like, what does this company actually do? So it didn't really. I was a bit puzzled about that. Firstly, you're an entrepreneur, Deepak. What was the reason that you wanted to start your company?
So the reason I started this company was really just to help people. So if I whiz back a few years, I'd actually started other websites in the past. I'd actually, during uni, I wasn't studying too much sometimes and missing lectures sometimes, but only because I became fascinated with kind of autopilot websites and generating revenue kind of passively in a way. So by the time I finished uni, I think I ended up with about 80 different websites.
Oh, wow.
Running on one server, and they all done weird and wonderful things. So there was everything from kind of how to watch movie trailers online, and I'd get paid from like adverts on that website.
Oh, wow.
I had a free SIM card comparison engine where you could go to the website and order a free O2 SIM card or a free Vodafone SIM card or free. There was T-Mobile at the time, so
Oh, wow.
all of those things. So, and then we had like weird other things. Like I think I'd set up at one point during uni. I don't know if the audience or you remember all those websites before where you could watch like the OC online, where you had to watch it on like a weird. You didn't have Netflix. It was way before Netflix and Amazon Prime, but you had to go to a website that was like watch-oc-online- something series online, and you had to kind of work your way through multiple pop-ups. So I had a few of those.
For the younger members of the audience, Napster, these things, I still remember the first ever tune I downloaded, and it was like you'd get like a word of mouth. There was no kind of prominent search engine or social media channels. It would always be like, there was a friend of mine actually at high school. He knew how to download like a ringtone for your Nokia phone, and you'd have to go to this obscure website and type in literally the notes on your phone. It would be like, okay, if you want to play, I don't know, Kylie Minogue or whatever it was, or Knight Rider, you'd have to type in like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, and then you'd sit there for like literally half an hour making it work, and you'd be like the coolest kid. So this is during that era, is it?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. We didn't really have phones. Netflix and kind of Facebook didn't exist. So I was kind of like experimenting how to make passive income and how to kind of help people then. But the reason I kind of moved away from those 80 websites, which kind of helped me to kind of travel the world at that point, was I want to set up the company, really, because that was your question, because 80 websites was great and there was lots of people using this site and all from all over the world. But I wanted one main platform that would kind of help people every day. So that's what we've kind of built, like one platform where everyone can come to claim whatever free samples or freebies are giving away on that day from top brands. They can come in, order something, free postage, free delivery, just deliver straight to your door. You don't have to kind of worry about anything.
Because I guess like what I'm more interested in is like, this is, you probably, when you were creating these websites, and like there's lots of friends I know who've done something similar where they've got a website, but then somehow it kind of gets traction. Did you even know what marketing was at that time, or how was it more like, okay, here's an innovative thing, here's something new, website, probably a WordPress website with a domain that's like having loads of different URLs, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
How did you, what was your first interaction with marketing, I guess?
First interaction with marketing was probably when I was about 16 or 17. I'd set up a eBay store, basically, and that was something new. So eBay had only launched a few years back, and this was this new, weird and wonderful place where you could list your kind of things you have around your house and kind of sell them to other people around the world, which didn't exist because at that point all that existed was probably like markets and boot sales, where you had to go face to face and sell things. You couldn't sell something to someone around the world.
The loot, I don't know if you remember the newspaper, it would be like, my dad would be like, oh, if you want a new table or a shoe, you'd ring someone up and literally physically go. It was quite effective actually at that time. But
now we have Facebook Marketplace. So
Facebook, and you've got like, there's a website my friend told me about where you list your product and they would actually come and collect it, and it's gone back to almost like this full circle. Excuse me. In terms of your, okay, so 80 into 1, right? That must have taken you a lot of like, was it like based on data, or was it hunches, or how did you actually kind of whittle everything down into something which is quite precise and actually very targeted to your niche audience?
So what happened really was kind of first year of uni, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the future. I feel like lots of people I met in uni didn't really know what they were doing. So I was doing a marketing degree at the time and still kind of learning about marketing, kind of. But at that point, I just wanted to learn about what other kind of websites would kind of make money, because I figured at that point I would actually probably graduate from uni and then go get a job in, kind of follow my peers in a way, and go get a job in a different marketing company or like another banking company, or work for any other kind of big company somewhere in a marketing team. Basically, that's what kind of 90% of my peers and everyone on my course ended up doing, basically. So that's what I thought would happen. So when I was running all these websites, it was kind of like making money for drinks, basically. So beer money, in a way.
The best motivation you can have.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to, kind of, my goal at that point was just to make like £5 a day, and that was it. I was like, if I could make £5 a day, that would pay for like a couple of drinks in a bar at that point. And I'd be happy, basically. And I couldn't even dream of it making, let's say, kind of £1,000 a month or something. But that's what ended up happening. So by the time I finished uni, I was making like almost like £1,000 a month. And I was like, that's the same thing from me going to get like a graduate job somewhere. And if I can keep increasing it to, let's say, like £20 a day, £30 a day, £40 a day, £50 a day, now we have even more bigger targets, basically. So that's how it all began, basically. But kind of moving from 80 to 1 was really just, I wanted to kind of have a bigger impact and reach more people, because I knew all these 80 websites were reaching kind of different people all the time. But I knew if I had one big website which I could shout about from the rooftops, it would kind of help more people. And it was kind of launching during the recession of 2008, 2009, when people were still struggling. So it was kind of the perfect vacuum for launching some money to help you save and live for free, basically.
I mean, I do remember because it's one of these things where, you know, the name does exactly what it says on the tin, latest free stuff. And it's like, okay, so this is what you get. One thing before we go into the nitty gritty of that, could you tell us, like, did you start with like a customer persona, or like, was it in like some sort of, okay, so this is what all the audiences that I have collected across the different websites have kind of are thinking, or this is the most useful tool? How did that kind of, could you tell us a bit more about that kind of decision making?
Yeah, so I think at that point I didn't really know much about the customer persona. Arguably we know a lot more in the last 5 years, what kind of, as we built the company. But at the start, kind of Google Analytics didn't even exist when we launched a company. So it was hard to go and measure what kind of people are using the sites. In the first year, I remember setting up like a survey form with SurveyMonkey, which was like, it just launched, which was this new amazing thing. And the way I learned about customer personas was I sent a physical survey out to like all the members, left a telephone number at the end and said, can I call you? And I spoke to kind of half a dozen people on the phone, and they were just like some of our members who were using the site every day to claim freebies. And they were kind of like males and females, people who had kids, people who didn't have kids, older generation who just wanted to kind of get some excitement in the day, where you get a free sample of like perfume that drops through the door, like a free food sample or a free drink that dropped through the door, and then they'd go run off to the supermarket and go and claim some more, basically. So
one thing the next question to kind of follow up from that was, I guess you did your surveys of your various users, but was there something that you kind of saw back from the data? For example, I don't know, more female respondents, and whenever you do product X or category beauty or maybe free drink, that just kept on, becoming a very popular thing. And how did you follow up your hunches? And also, has there been a point where you've tried something completely new or radical, which you didn't think, but it kind of worked out?
Yeah, so I think what we saw, which was the trend in the first year or two, when I sat there looking at all the data, was that beauty products were the most popular kind of category, and the thing that people were clicking on the kind of most. And that kind of followed up with trying to... At that point, we didn't even have an email database. So some people I was speaking to, they said you need to be kind of start emailing everyone kind of every few days or every day or every week to say, like, here are the new freebies that we could claim. So at that point, we didn't even know a persona, but then we tried to launch email newsletters, and we tried to learn more about the data, tried to learn who everyone was and what kind of freebies they like and what they don't. And now what we've learned is kind of 70% of the site, 80% almost, is female, and lots of mothers, lots of people who have kids, or lots of people who are pregnant, funny enough, or people who are like teenagers sometimes, or like kind of students, and they're trying to save a bit of money. But it's very wide now, is what we've learned. So it's not a specific age group of like 18 to 25. It ranges from like 18 to kind of 65, 75, and we've got people who are in the older generation, and those people kind of still enjoy, they're still learning how the internet works, and they've found this site called Latest Free Stuff where they can sit there every day, and it's like going to kind of Groupon, but imagine everything's completely free, basically. So it's like there's no cost to it, there's kind of no obligation. They can like order something, they don't have to get their credit card out and kind of spend money, and instead they can just sit there and order a sample if they want something.
What's been the most, I mean, without going into too much detail, don't give away your trade secrets, what's been the most popular giveaway that you've ever given away? Or
so funny enough, it's actually Cadbury's chocolate bars, but I guess that's just because it's generic, and people love chocolate. So Cadbury once gave away thousands and thousands of bars of chocolate, and they still do every Christmas. They run something called Cadbury Secret Santa, where they give away like 1 million chocolate bars, and you have to go around the country looking for like these QR codes, and we go around the country looking for QR codes and kind of putting the links on our website. So that was our most popular freebie of last year, basically. Just because they're giving away 1 million bars for free. You can send it to like your loved one or your friend or family, and it's completely free to do, but these links run out very quickly, so it creates lots of not entertainment, but like creates lots of urgency to try and claim things really quickly. It's
like this kind of thing, an international world-class brand actually is doing something quite altruistic, where you're not benefiting from it, someone else is, and it kind of gamifies the whole. I did come across, I think one of our clients actually was responsible for a pop-up for Cadbury, so that's how it kind of came into my radar. What has that taught you about how people are motivated, essentially? From the data you've seen, you've run your company for a long time. What is the thing that that surprised you? This is off script, by the way. This is just
So what kind of surprised me about that is how passionate people were to kind of stay up all day and all night claiming offers. So sometimes we'd have members messaging us at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and sharing links in our Facebook groups and kind of Twitter communities, saying, I've managed to claim, but when you look at the timestamp of when they've sent us messages, it's like 3:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. So I was I don't know when. And they're literally just at that point sending a chocolate bar to their mum or to their friend.
Oh, that's
and they're using our website to find all these things, because we've created like a source of, let's say, 60 different links that they can try, but the only way to test if they work is to click from 1 to 60 and go through manually and click through each one.
Oh wow.
So they will be quite dedicated. So that's what it taught me, the dedication people have to kind of claim something when they really, like, theoretically they could go to kind of Tesco or to a supermarket and just go and buy a chocolate bar and stick it in the post, but dedication is quite amazing.
I mean, from my perspective, there's something about getting something for free, even if you have, like if you were to sit down like a mathemat, do the calculation, you spend half an hour getting something which is worth 70p. Your time is per, and like people who kind of queue up on the first day of Apple launches, that kind of thing. I think there's something about that kind of intrinsically motivates you. It's not just like I can go and buy 10 of these in the time I spent to get this. It's more like, I don't know, I think there's a gamified element to it, and that kind of brings me to the next theme, how do you use gamification in your campaigns or the things that you run?
So gamification on the site, we use lots of things. We run our own internal competitions. That's where we gamify things. So we have a weekly giveaway where we give away our own prizes to our members, to loyal members, and we use lots of gamification there, where we get people to kind of enter the competition, and kind of like you get extra entries for kind of sending something on Twitter to one of your friends, or kind of posting on your own Facebook, but we also allow people to share to kind of download the app, but also like share the giveaway with their friends. So we get and we actually see it on the back end of our own platforms, is we see the offer being shared across lots of different platforms, because we can see where they're sharing it. And sometimes you get lots of influx of people coming from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and you can see kind of half a dozen people have shared our competition onto Instagram. So it's kind of like, instead of us sending it to 1,000 people, we've got 1,000 entries. We would have ended up, if we had stopped it there and just kind of left a simple form, it would have only had 1,000 entries. But the kind of gamification that we put into it means that we have like 3,000 entries, and we've reached all these new people.
So it's almost like there's like a super core of people who love sharing stuff with their friends. I mean, I get things on my WhatsApp saying, hey, you got to do this, or you got to sign up to this. So I'll get, like the Box, I think was it Box or one of these companies where you share the Dropbox. I think it was like you share the link with someone, you get 5 megabytes of data and gigabytes or whatever it was. And I think it's still to this day the most popular gamification strategy that's ever been run. Or Uber, like the first time I got Uber, I got £10 off, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And I got hooked, and I've far made my money back. Uber's probably made more money back from me than anyone.
Funny story, I've actually been banned from Uber now, the referral program. I banned
whoa.
too many people through their program.
Deepak, if you can share how much, I guess because you've got a platform where you can, it's almost like you've got this link, and every time someone signs up, it's £10 to your credit. How much can you tell us? How much you?
It ended up being thousands at one point, and then I think they noticed, because it probably ended up becoming the most shared referral link ever. But so some system somewhere picked up on it. But now funny enough, the Uber's become, so going from like being banned, they're actually one of our clients now. So we actually work with them on an official basis with their marketing team to promote their service and send people to their service, basically, because they, like, in terms of like value, there's actually a good value service, because people
you've persuaded thousands of people to sign up to them. Surely they owe you money. It's like, was there a moment where you walked into the Uber's offices and you're like, hi, my name's Deepak Tailor, and they were like, you're the Deepak Tailor?
Yeah, there's been lots of like altercations with some companies. So Airbnb, I was banned for many, many years. But that was for a whole bunch of the same reasons, I think. But for the referral campaign,
not actual from like trashing someone's place or anything.
It was just referring too many users, and they get very annoyed. So with Uber, it's actually quite good. So they let you carry on with their service. With Airbnb, I effectively was banned from ever renting anywhere. So that was like a kind of very annoying for a while, because I didn't have it available for me to use if I wanted to.
I mean, I'm sorry, but it's fair usage, as in like they gave they've made this link, and you just happen to be a very connected, and you have the platform in place to actually get loads and loads of users. So that's up to them. It's not up to you. The next one is essentially, this kind of ties into exactly what we were talking about. You've got all these brands that you work with, some household names and some really, really big companies. What's the value proposition for them when you approach them to say, hey, do you want to do a giveaway with us? You mentioned companies wanting to test new products or see if it kind of almost like market research, new flavors, for example. But essentially, like for the other companies that you work with, is there like a value proposition that you go in and share with them?
Yeah, so I've seen lots of value propositions. And if I talk about kind of some of the FMCG brands, because there's lots of them launching, as you said, new kind of products, which is like new flavors of different things, or they're testing different kind of products types in their own kind of marketing cycle. So lots of them, I've noticed, when a freebie arrives, so say you've got a can of Red Bull that arrives, accompanying that in your little pack will always be a coupon in there.
Okay.
And that's one thing they can track all the way through. So when someone goes to use that coupon in like Tesco or Sainsbury's or any local supermarket, they can actually see how many of those gets used. And we've had data back from clients sometimes saying, okay, like 10% of people got this sample, but like 20% or like 30% of people actually went off to go and buy something in a supermarket where they've got 20p off like the next purchase, basically. So in terms of that's what they want to kind of encourage in a way, because that just brings together the customer into becoming kind of like a lifetime customer of a specific brand, basically.
I want to ask you a controversial question, Deepak. Like what if the brand would say you're cannibalizing our existing customers in terms of these people would have bought a can of Red Bull anyway, but you've just given them 20% off or 20p off, whatever that may be.
Yeah, so there'll be cases like that. I would argue that we've got quite a large audience across the whole UK. So what actually happens in their marketing teams is they're going to go and spend X amount already on Facebook and Twitter and X amount on Instagram already. Why don't they try a different subset of kind of users of people who are kind of passionate about giveaways and competitions and freebies, claiming these offers? And we've proved already in case studies with other brands that they've gone on to kind of become good customers.
Like loyal customers.
Yeah. And we've seen that with one of our biggest case studies is subscription services. So some people... subscription service is one of the most popular type of products on our website now because they might try a free product. So someone like Simply Cook is one that's quite big. They do like little food pouches and boxes where you can get food deliveries to your house. And the first one is completely free, but the subsequent ones are chargeable. And we know the retention rate is quite good for them as a client.
I mean, a lot of SaaS and also startups that we work with, the biggest hassle for them is literally getting someone to try something out. So if anyone's watching and the product, they've spent a lot of time doing R&D on their product, what would be your advice to them to say, get someone to try it in the first place? Like as from a marketing perspective, what tools of persuasion or tools of marketing would you recommend?
So one of the best things I've seen is probably to build excitement about the product. So that's what some of the best giveaways we've seen on the site are ones where they'll have a multi-stage process. So the first section might be, okay, we have 1,000 bars of chocolate to give away from this new brand giving away chocolate bars. But instead of doing a form where they just need to fill in their name and address and the first come first serve, everyone gets one. There's some companies who will have a coming soon page and this giveaway is going to come soon, kind of like Kickstarter-esque in a way, where you need to fill in your name, fill in your email address, and then the more friends you refer, the kind of quicker you'll get to like the kind of up above the wait list in a way. And then after that passes, let's say like a couple of weeks later, they might have a giveaway, but it might be 1,000 to give away across like a period. So instead of them collecting only 1,000 people's kind of data or potential customers, they've effectively sometimes collected 21,000, 22,000, and they've kind of like 20x the data and like potential of like how many people could reach their product. So they've got a much bigger base of people who are effectively like the product and might buy it in the future, but they could send them emails, they could send them text messages, they could message them on WhatsApp, they could get them to join their Facebook page, and kind of you've built like a kind of community of people who might be the first potential customers, but without, and arguably with minimal kind of upfront payment basically, and they've not shipped out lots of units of the product anyway.
It's almost like you're going to have to pay some sort of a customer acquisition, whereas this kind of tool, or I guess if you were to use this, you're almost multiplying that to the maximum scale possible. In a way where you're still going to have to pay the customer acquisition cost, but you're making sure that you're actually getting some really, really good quality interested parties who you could market to over and over again in the future.
And probably the best thing is like if you've got like someone starting a company from completely scratch, you don't need to go and pay someone to acquire. You just need to go and share it on your own Instagram or your own Twitter or your own company, and then share it in public places where it can get shared virally. So you don't need to go and pay an upfront cost, and that's exactly what I did when I started. Basically, I didn't have hundreds of thousands of kind of pounds to go and spend on marketing. So up until the first couple of years, and still to date, really, we still spend nothing on marketing. Like it's zero our advertising budget, because we just don't need to. Like all of our traffic comes from organic sources where people are sharing offers with each other, and we still to date really don't spend any money on advertising.
So Deepak, if you were to start your company again, what would you do from day one? Like I want to kind of make an analogy so anyone who's listening, who's kind of or watching is actually thinking of doing something on their own. What would your advice be to them?
My advice probably would have been to never. So sometimes I can be a bit hesitant to launch things sometimes, and over the years we've kind of grown and done things slowly, and probably in hindsight we should have done it faster. So the newest thing we have right now, which we launched last year, was we've got a WhatsApp group with over 20,000 people, or 25,000 people actually now.
Wow.
And that's a new marketing channel that we could have launched months and months beforehand, but we sat on it trying to think if we were doing something wrong. If we had started it earlier, we could have by now had 30 or 40,000 people in the group. And those are kind of like WhatsApp's kind of used by everyone to kind of talk to their friends and family, and that's why it's become such a popular channel, because you just check WhatsApp more than your email.
You do.
And then it's kind of bigger than our email now. In terms of how many people we can reach, basically.
And I guess unlike an email, you're getting straight into someone's phone. People are unlikely to change their phone numbers for decades. So you're kind of reaching, getting your customers closer to point zero, in terms of, I think, zero moment of truth, where you're actually getting them to go and redeem the offer or sign up to something.
So I would say make sure you just don't sit on ideas. Just go and do it. That's the biggest tip for me. If
you've got a hunch, just follow it up and execute. If you, going back to the question I had earlier, if you could start your business again, what would you do differently?
I'd probably have kind of done things faster and not gone slower. Sometimes we took too long to decide on different things. We've just in the process of launching in other countries. I probably would have started that earlier. Because by now we could have been in a whole bunch of different countries with the same kind of marketing platform that we have right now.
Okay. Just are you a funded business, or is it self-funded? How does, how have you approached that?
So completely bootstrapped the company. So I started from my bedroom. Didn't really have a desk. I was just lying on my bed. I had, I think, £300, and found a developer who could build a website for me. He created the homepage, and I got my friends and family to kind of look at what they thought of it. And then he built the website, and then with very, very little knowledge of kind of marketing, I just kind of went live with it and see what would happen. And it's kind of, that was the starting blocks of how the site started. And then as we kind of grew, more and more people shared it with other friends and family, and we kind of grew in Facebook. Twitter started up as this brand new thing which you could kind of share with other people. And then when we launched the email newsletter, it got even bigger, basically.
Wow. So it's you've built on top of something and then kept on iterating until you are where you are, because the stats and the numbers that you've got in terms of the number of followers and visitors, that's, sometimes money cannot buy that. It's almost like you've kind of grown it organically, and because of that, you've kind of, your audience, you've kind of step by step kind of built it. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, no, it would be. Yeah, so everything's gone step by step, but it's because we've kind of taken things slowly. So one of my nightmares was to kind of go down a route where we would get investment from a VC company, because it would heap lots of pressure on targets, lots of pressure on we need to make money straight away. The way I'd done it was a bit slower than that, but we kind of grew. We made some money in year one, and then we reinvested that money into the website and kind of growing our audiences, but also kind of reaching more clients. And then the money we made from year two, again, we didn't spend all of it. We just reinvested that back into the website. So effectively, we never needed investor money.
Wow.
And still to date, we never needed investor money.
I mean, there are lots of people who are in these situations, and this is a story of growing things organically and under your own terms, rather than having, there are lots of companies that we work with where they have taken on funding, and the business is grow at all costs, and that's usually, it kind of skews or it kind of changes things in a way. And within reason, there are some businesses where you do need funding, and there are some that you don't. So this is a success story. Next up, in terms of more kind of specific marketing questions, how do you see marketing changing in the future for your business? Obviously you've said early adopting things like WhatsApp groups and things like that. How do you see what's worth investing in and what's worth kind of?
So I think what we are quite good at is trying to pivot and move in different directions of where the kind of world is moving and what people are using across the UK. So one of the big things a few years ago was TikTok. TikTok was like a new magical place where people were sharing videos of themselves dancing, really, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
So that was something we had to take advantage of, and then we hired someone to kind of effectively do the same thing, but instead of dancing, they would showcase the freebies they got every few days.
Oh, wow.
So we were trying to always take advantage of these new things that were coming up and people were using. I feel like as soon as what's the other one that Instagram launched? Threads.
Yeah.
So as soon as it got launched, we launched a Threads account, and we still to date post on Threads. So it's trying to pivot and change with the new marketing channels that get launched. So we're quite good at trying to keep on top of those, because if you don't, someone else is going to be there anyway. So we would prefer to be the biggest one in that platform, basically, for what we do. And then what we'll do is also kind of cross promote all of our users. So say a few days after Threads launch, we were kind of shouting from the rooftops in our email and Facebook and on our WhatsApp, funnily enough, that we've launched on Threads. So lots of people joined us on there.
So it's cross promoting, using one platform to take your users to another one.
Yeah.
Next up, how do you measure the success of marketing campaigns? For your business rather than for your clients.
So for our business specifically, when we have invested money, it would be trying to kind of work out how loyal a customer is. And sometimes that's not the kind of source's fault where a customer's not loyal. It's more that we haven't got the platform right sometimes, or where we're joining people through to. So one of our best kind of collaboration things we've done last year was joining together with other websites that were similar in our industry, and cross-promoting the WhatsApp groups and promoting it to each other, basically promoting to say, like, this is a new WhatsApp group where you can get freebies and samples delivered to your door, and that was quite an interesting proposition for most consumers. And then we promoted some of the things that company was doing too. So the ROI we could measure, because on WhatsApp it allows you to measure where users came from, and how they kind of joined together with us, and we can see how many people kind of click through to different things.
You mentioned something very interesting. What does a loyal customer look like to you?
A loyal customer for us is really someone who comes through to the website every day, ideally. We've got lots of those users who download our app and then use it every single day, but also use our website and use our WhatsApp and use our newsletter. So it's those people who come back every day to kind of claim offers, because I think one of the things about freebies and samples is they run out very quickly.
Yeah.
So sometimes we'll send an offer out to say, oh, you need to claim all these kind of free Pampers nappies, but kind of an hour later they're all gone, and it could be like 10,000 of them.
Wow.
So they go very, very fast, because kind of free promotions sometimes get shared with your friends and family and across the internet very quickly, because there's no obligation to kind of pay for anything.
It's almost like a flash sale where you've got a limited time to actually claim your offer, and when it's gone kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine it's completely free, so it's going to go even faster.
And, I'm a sucker for these things.
Yep.
So whenever I see something which is a special offer, or I just jump on it straight away. And I know enough now that when something good comes in, you got to go on it straight away. Next up, what's been the most challenging marketing project you've ever worked on, or a client that you've ever worked on? And you thought, okay, let's take it on, but then it just didn't work out, or and how did you overcome that?
So the most interesting one is probably, I'll bring you back to a story with Uber, actually, funny enough. So Uber's an interesting client, and there's lots of history with us from all the kind of previous stuff that happened over the years, but they're very set in their ways of wanting to do things their way with their own branding, and kind of wording that they want. So every time when we were setting up a partnership with them, we had to write things that are slightly different from how our brand guidelines work on our own website, because Uber can't, effectively, even though they have free promotion, sometimes they wouldn't let us use the word free in the promotion.
Oh, I see.
They said it had to be get £10 off a ride. It couldn't be a free £10 ride. But that's probably just because someone in their legal team at some point has said, someone complained at some point that it's not free, because if you end up paying for like £11 ride, you get charged £1 or £2 because you have to pay for the extra that goes. Then you don't really know how much you're being charged sometimes until you arrive at destination. So we went in circles for months and months to bring them on board, because we couldn't all agree on like an approved kind of copy that we were going to use. And that becomes very tricky with the biggest and I find this only happens with the biggest companies, which is why sometimes we prefer working with smaller companies. But the biggest companies that we have, they're very strict over different kind of ways that we promote things. And we know effectively, if we had to kind of write things our way, we would effectively bring in more customers, and more customers would recognize what the brand is and offer. But you're kind of tied down in the way that you have to do something, because you just have to follow what they're doing anyway.
Yeah, we've all been in situations where you deal with the marketing team, but then there's a layer of approvals that's got to go through. And this is one of the frustrating things I find, where we know something is going to work, but they are kind of hands tied behind their back, because they've got to go through their bosses, but then has to get some approval from senior management. So it's frustrating. And I think a lot of the times, when we're talking to our direct, customers, they're kind of frustrated because they're like, we know this is going to work, but, the sound just doesn't work, or XYZ doesn't work. And these are frustrations everyone goes through. And how did that Uber campaign go?
It went really well, and we're still working with them today. So once we got over the first hurdle of kind of getting them on the site, everything's been fine since. But we did have to come up with kind of a compromise, and both sides had to compromise on both sides. Nice. But we got there in the end.
Yeah, we got there in the end, just like a Uber destination. What is your Uber rating?
What is my Uber rating? I should go and check, but I think I was hovering around 4.8. Or 4.7. I couldn't understand why, because I don't understand why anyone's not given me 5 stars.
So I went to Deepak's Christmas do, so I hope you managed to get home okay, and you didn't nothing happened in the Uber ride, which would mean it dropped down by 1%. I've been there, I've puked in an Uber. I'll ashamedly say I paid £80 for that. Not one of my proudest moments, but it happens once in a while. And yeah, I kept my Uber rating to 4.7, I believe. And I'm working myself back up to 4.8, which is what I want to keep it at. We will get Deepak's Uber rating at some point, and
I'll share with you later.
You need to send us a screenshot. Excuse me. How do you identify brands that you want to work with?
So we identify brands based on what kind of promotions they kind of run, and it's probably going to be a bit obvious, but they have to run some kind of free promotion. Effectively, sometimes it can be a competition where they're giving away, let's say, 1,000 perfume bottles or 1,000 perfume samples. So effectively, the kind of way we find them is kind of dependent on what kind of marketing strategies they use internally, and if they're giving away the first the product, let's say a subscription service, it could be like the first one is free, or the first one is free with postage, and the second one you have to pay for like a box. So it's those kind of customers, those kind of clients work the best, and the reason we go for those is because we know the users love them. So it's kind of like a win-win from both sides if we can win one of those clients, because we know that once we add them on the website, they're gonna get lots of good customers on the site anyway. So it's kind of, it works for all parties. It works for our users, it works for the client, it works for us too. So
because I guess once you prove the ROI, or once you actually prove, okay, this actually works, then they'll want to work with you. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you put your best foot forward with these kind of campaigns. Are there any brands or product or categories that you wouldn't work with?
Probably something like a luxury brand or perfume that's giving away. I've seen Chanel bottles for like hundreds of pounds sometimes being given away. We've tested those things on the site and it just doesn't work very well. So it probably like a luxury product that's giving like an exclusive product away that's hundreds if not thousands of pounds sometimes. We'll normally shy away from those, but only because we probably haven't got the target audience of people who are interested in those things.
I mean, if I were to see, for example, Chanel, I'd probably think, oh, maybe this is something wrong with it, or maybe this is a fake, you know. So I guess when there's like uber luxury versus something which is like a Cadbury chocolate, you know, you're like, oh yeah, Cadbury, I can sign up to this, that's fine. There's that kind of battle that you've got to work in your customers' minds. You've been on lots of publications, including Dragon's Den, which is my next question. You know, there are marketers who may be listening. What tips would you give to them if they want to improve their kind of PR, or they want to get themselves out there?
So do you mean on the Dragon's Den side? Or do you
as
mean
in terms of, you know, you've been featured on lots of publications because you have a very attractive proposition. But has there been when you first started off, you know, did you do something to kind of prompt this, or did you reach out? You know, what was that? Any advice and tips?
Yeah, so one of the first ways we actually got publications or get the kind of, let's say, the national press to notice us, which is kind of the Times and the Daily Mirror and the Sun and those kind of people, was actually just responding to something called journalist requests.
Yeah.
So if you go on Twitter and type in journo request and as like a hashtag, there's lots of journalists who literally are just writing an article about how to save money in the new year, or how do you in the summer kind of save money with like holidays. And we reached out to some of those journalists, and I used to spend a couple of hours a day just reaching out and responding to these journalists to say, oh, we run a different website called latestfreestuff.co.uk, and here you can claim a free pack of Kleenex tissue packs right now, which you can take with you on your holiday. And some of the journalists will obviously ignore you, but some of them might actually become quite receptive to it. And off the back of that, we actually ended up with a series of articles in the Daily Mirror, where we shared our top 10 ways to save money. And that ended up being the first article we got shared across nationally, across the website, and it actually ended up in the printed press. So my mum got very impressed when she went down to the supermarket and bought a copy with my name in it.
I mean, you know, we spoke about this just before we hit record, where mums, God bless them, sometimes don't understand the world of digital marketing. And when you do something which is instantly recognizable, that's when you've literally put yourself in the picture. Which brings me to the next question. Dragon's Den, can you tell us about how that journey happened? And also the ROI, the unbelievable ROI that you received from it.
So Dragon's Den was an interesting one. So we'd just won an award, and I think I was like Young Entrepreneur of the Year at that point, off like another show that was running nationally. And someone in their research team had spotted it and actually asked us to apply for the show.
Oh, wow.
So they actually reached out to us. And growing up as a child, it was my favorite show just because I loved watching entrepreneurs kind of like pitch their ideas, and kind of learning about how the businesses work, how they make money, how they do, what happens to them years and years later if they kind of completely fail, or whether they do well. So I used to avidly watch every season as soon as it launched on BBC Two, I think it was at that point. So when they applied, I knew, and there was a problem, so I was very close at that point, not even replying to the email, because I knew what would happen if I actually applied and I actually ended up on the show. And kind of growing up as a kid, I actually used to be an introvert, and I still am now, so I wouldn't normally kind of be the loudest person in the room. I'll normally be the quiet person in the room who will just be like chit-chatting to different people. So to go on national TV where you've got no one else around you, there's nothing you can do about it, is the scariest thing in the world to me.
Wow.
But I went past that, replied to it just because I thought I'd regret it forever if I didn't reply to it. And then a few kind of stages later, where they go from researching your idea to making sure you're legitimate and making sure you actually run a business, they had sent me up to Manchester. I'd taken about 2 suitcases of freebies with me.
Oh, wow.
On the train up there, and then kind of spent the last kind of spent weeks before that preparing and writing up a list of like 1,000 questions and memorizing all the kind of 1,000 answers that they might give to me. And the only reason I'd done that is because I watched so many entrepreneurs kind of struggle with, what was your net profit 3 years ago? What was your what was your like gross margin through 5 years ago? So I wanted to kind of make sure every time they asked me a question, I would never have a not sure response to that, because I knew that sometimes on those episodes they lose the pitch based on those things, because the dragons just lose their kind of
they lose confidence
in you. Yeah, that's what it is. What it ended up being was kind of, and I didn't notice at the time, you end up pitching in the den. For those kind of viewers who've seen it, you end up like talking to the dragons for up to about 2 hours basically.
Wow.
So sometimes mine was about an hour and a half that I was in there, standing on the same spot, the little X on the floor. And then I know you only see like 10 minutes sometimes,
because they really edit it, right?
They edit it very far down, and what I've noticed is they kind of remove all the stuff that is very businessy, but they'll try to portray a story about the entrepreneur where they learn about what they do and how they're going in terms of a journey. So one thing you don't see is that you're just sitting there or standing there talking with no support around you. You've got hundreds of lights on you, you've got cameras everywhere, it's completely black. So they create a very high pressure situation, which is much more, and this is much more relaxing just talking to you.
Thanks.
But that was probably the most like stressful thing I've ever done, like standing there for 2 hours and preparing for everything.
Wow.
But it turned out to become really, really big for us, and kind of like a big milestone for us in terms of a company, because I didn't really know at that point how things would go, because I'd had a few newspaper articles in the newspaper, and you get some traffic from that, and you get some people who sign up to the website, and that's all kind of very good. But when we went live on a Sunday evening, I think it was, we ended up with getting about 78,000 people a minute coming to our site.
Wow.
And that was groundbreaking for us, because we had like a few friends had come on kind of recording on the same day as me, and they were like a dating app of some kind. And they had said they got like 20,000 downloads in the whole like week or two of people kind of watching their episode and going on to kind of download this app. So I was figuring that we'd get a couple of thousand people who would download the app or sign up to a newsletter, but we ended up getting 78,000 people a minute coming to the site, and then about 350,000 people signed up to our newsletter on that day, on that evening. So within about 3 hours, 4 hours, we had 350,000 people join our email database, kind of looking for new offers like this. And that to us was like the greatest ROI experiment ever, because you don't really pay to go on the show. It's just kind of recording it as TV, and it kind of brought a whole kind of new subset of audience into our platform, and lots of those people still use the website today. And
it's like instant credibility and like social proof, and BBC, when they cover you, it's not a small thing, it's huge.
It's huge.
Just for the audience, could you remind us, what ended up happening with? Did anyone invest in your business? What was the in the actual show itself?
So we ended up getting 3 offers in the end as a company. So we had 3 different offers. I ended up accepting an offer from Deborah Meaden.
Yeah.
And that one other thing about Dragon's Den, which I learned very quickly on the show, is once you kind of shake hands and accept an offer, lots of things don't happen for a very long time. Sometimes it can be months before you even get paperwork or like a deal agreed, and then kind of one thing led to another, and then there was a long time where there was a gap between like when we'd been on the show and when we even like broadcasted the episode. But it worked out that we just couldn't go ahead with the deal from both sides, for a whole bunch of different reasons. But I think we both wished each other well, and then kind of moved on. But it didn't work out in the end. But
this is the thing I learned. Another friend of mine had this thing where he pitched to the Dragons, they'd agreed, but it was just like due diligence didn't happen, or his business had suddenly started taking off, so he didn't need the money. So it was just like, these things don't really, in the show, 30-minute or an hour show, they want to have a beginning, middle, end. So, but in reality, it doesn't, maybe you didn't even need the money after the thousands and thousands and thousands of signups you had.
Realistically, it wasn't that all the kind of TV exposure actually happened way after the deal had kind of even like not happened. So, but most people don't realize on TV it looks like you've just signed and sealed the deal straight away as soon as you shake hands, but it's not like that.
Man, there's Shark Tank and there's loads of other kind of similar programs where things are showed for entertainment purposes, but in reality, it's in the real world of business, it's completely different. Lastly, this is how we our first ever conversation. Where is the best place to work remotely?
I would say the best place at the moment, just because I do like it, is WeWork.
Yeah.
I've been here for, I think in this building, we've always had a WeWork for probably about 6 years. So I know this building in kind of Tower Hill area very, very well. It's always given us quite a lot of flexibility. We've kind of grown and scaled down with the company. I know they're going through lots of financial trouble at the moment, but I've not seen anything from that affects us personally as a company.
But you've also like traveled across different locations as like a digital nomad almost, right?
I've done that over years. So my first trip when I launched all those 80 different websites, I finished university and didn't do what kind of the rest of my peers were doing at that point, which is go straight into a graduate job. So I spent about 7 or 8 months traveling around the world and I think I ended up going to like 22 countries.
Wow.
And lots of that time was just kind of carrying on with building this network of like different websites that I was running at the time.
Wow.
And expanding them and kind of hiring people in like different countries to try and kind of try and grow the different sites and kind of take workload off myself. So I ended up with hiring staff in Philippines who like are personal assistants and people who kind of can manage the site for me whilst I was traveling.
Wow.
Because
I think the other one you mentioned you'd given me 3 tips. I think it's Costa Rica, Vietnam, and it wasn't Bali. It was another one. Was it Bali? I can't remember.
It was Bali.
Yeah. So because I think I was like, it was a freezing cold night, and I was like, hey, I just literally moved into this office we shared together. In the cold, and I was like, hey, how's it going? And then we just started, and I was like, where's the best place to go? And you gave me 3, so I actually wrote that in my WhatsApp, in my notes somewhere, so that's there. So next up is rapid fire questions. Deepak, what are 3 must-read books for you?
What are 3 must-read books? So I would have said the obvious one is probably my own book, but I don't want to say that one. But I would say
you can't plug your own.
I would say the kind of one that inspired me the most is like 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. So that was the reason I went traveling, was to try and create a lifestyle around my own life in a way, where I wanted to work a 4-hour work week. So instead of spending 40 hours working for someone else, I wanted to work for 4 hours and kind of do what I wanted to do in my life. So that was one of the most inspiring books that I had. There's another one called The Lean Startup, which helped me a lot.
Eric Ries.
Yep. And Rich Dad Poor Dad helped me quite a lot too. They're all similar kind of industries in a way, but they helped me quite a lot.
Robert Kiyosaki. I've read all these books.
Okay,
I'm actually surprised I've read all these books. What are 3 must-listen to podcasts for you?
So apart from this one,
of course,
I would say there's a podcast called Secret Leaders by Dan Murray. I know Dan Murray quite well because he's part of the same entrepreneurship group that I'm in. And I've always just learned quite a lot from his podcast. And Mixergy, I think, runs Startup Stories. That's always been a really good one, just because I've always loved learning about people's journeys. And I've got that one on my podcast list. And Entrepreneurs on Fire. I've listened to them since they started in 2014 or something.
Oh, wow.
They've got one every day, which is a story about an entrepreneur's journey. So.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm going to be listening to these because these are new ones, except for we tried having Dan Murray in this podcast, but he was too busy. So if you're listening, Dan, please come to the podcast. We actually discussed this before I was talking to one of your team members here. What are 3 SaaS tools that you cannot live without?
So SaaS tools, one of them is definitely Slack, just because we can't live without that. The whole communication of the whole company happens with that. If it didn't exist, I don't know what we'd do.
Yeah.
We'd have to go back to like texting each other.
Yeah.
We use another one called Mixmax, which is probably the one you were speaking to with my colleague about. So that's to kind of an email automation software where it'll kind of auto follow up with different people. That's always been very helpful for us. And Charlie HR is also very good, but there's lots of similar ones, but it's just like a management for your team. It used to be completely free, which is why I recommend to everyone. I think there's a small charge now every month, but it's always been very good and helpful for us to organize things in the company.
Yeah, I know, Charles. They started off, I think they're part of your same entrepreneurial circle of group of friends, so I know them well. Really great branding. Next up, who are some people that inspire you and for people you followed? You mentioned looking at entrepreneurial stories from before. Like who are the first few people that come to mind?
One person that inspired me quite a lot before was a guy called Chris Ducker, which the reason he inspired me years and years ago when I started my company was he was the kind of go-to person for someone learning about outsourcing. When you were kind of learning about how to hire people in other countries, he was the person teaching people how to hire someone for a couple of dollars an hour, which was a lot of money for some people out locally, there. So that was like a good living when you were paying them kind of $3 to $4 an hour. There's a lot of value that comes in if you're hiring them for a full day. So he was my main kind of person that I still read emails from at the moment from him. Daniel Priestley is another one. He's kind of an expert, I would say, on personal branding. His book inspired me to write my own book. Because he talks a lot about how
publishing
to publish and become the expert in your industry. So me writing my own book about freebies and samples was me trying to become an expert in my industry.
Which you are.
Hopefully. Neil Patel's another person who's quite big. He talks a lot about everything with SEO.
Digital
marketing too. So he goes into lots of different places now.
Yeah, I've been Daniel Priestley has been quite a big inspiration for me. I've been to a couple of his seminars and I think I've read all of his books. And in a weird way, the reason this podcast exists is because he's like, publish, put yourself out there. And this is how it kind of came in. Any final words that you want to leave our beautiful and wonderful audience with?
Final words is what I tell people when I kind of talk to them when they're kind of starting something up, is actually go and just do the thing you're thinking about. And the only way to test whether something works, and I've learned this over years now, is actually just going to do it. I see too many people now who just will sit on an idea and never actually go and launch a product or launch a business or launch what they're thinking of doing. And so an example is probably this podcast. You probably had an idea of like, I want to launch a podcast at some point to help my business. And lots of people want to launch podcasts, but there's a tiny percentage of people who actually go and do it, because the only way to test whether it works is actually to go and do it. So it's credit to you for actually even doing this.
When you're an entrepreneur, you come across people who will be like, I had that idea for Uber like years ago, but then I'm like, what did you do about it? Nothing. Okay, so that kind of. Last thing, how can people get hold of you if they wanted to find out more, reach out to you, or get in touch?
So probably best way is just on LinkedIn. So if you just type my name into LinkedIn, it's just Deepak Tailor. I'll pop up somewhere on that list of results. So send me a message there, and I'm happy to help people out.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for coming on this show. You're going to be very busy for the next few months, probably a year or two. So, and again, thank you so much for coming in. We have enjoyed listening to your stories about, slaying the dragons, how you got started, and all sorts of lots of stories of how you went from 80 websites to one. So that's really something I actually didn't come up in my research. But thank you again for being on the show. And for the audience, please reach out to Deepak and sign up to the website, which he will plug.
So it's latestfreestuff.co.uk. So you can, for anyone in the UK, it'd be quite easy to sign up to our newsletter and WhatsApp. That's our big project for now.
And get lots of freebies. So for those of you watching and listening, thank you for listening, and see you at the next one.